Roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Here.
Hill?
Here.
Mingus?
Here.
Sutherland?
Here.
Mayor Call?
Here.
All present, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the pledge.
Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, thank you for everything you provide us. Please continue to remind us what we have and help us not dwell on what we have not. And remind us in what you teach us in Romans. But if we hope for what we do not yet have, we wait for it patiently. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the minutes, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the minutes of the regular meeting held on October 1st, 2019 be approved as printed.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
Aye.
Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you. Have nothing under communications this evening. Anyone in the audience wish to speak to the council on an agenda item, please come forward. An agenda item. Yes, sir.
I noticed you have, you're gonna buy 8 police cars, and that's a lot of money. And, why buy so many cars at one time? Can't you go like 4 at a time or something?
So last year, we didn't buy any police vehicles. So the ask at budget time, which is typically early spring, was a total of, I believe, 14 patrol vehicles. And the city council at the time, which was the previous one, approved the purchase of 7. And when we get to this agenda item, we'll explain how the 8th one comes into play.
All right, very good.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the council on agenda item, please come forward. Seeing no one, move along to the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt a consent agenda consisting of items numbered 1 and 2. Item number 1, adoption of Resolution 1920-067, resolution to approve payment of the schedule of bills listed on Schedule 11 in the amount of $4,184,784.12. Item number 2, adoption of Resolution number 1920-063 on its second reading. Resolution to approve contracts for Access Road 6 Improvement Project, as listed on the agenda for this meeting to be considered by omnibus vote.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
Aye.
Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I move that items numbered 1 and 2 listed on the consent agenda be hereby approved and adopted, and item number 2, having been read once by its title and having laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection, be adopted as presented.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. Any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
Aye.
Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have 3 items tonight. Mr. Mayor, I move that ordinance number 4458, hereto attached, an ordinance authorizing and providing for the issuance of not to exceed $18,225,000 taxable general obligation refunding bonds, alternate revenue source, Series 2 2019, for the purpose of refunding certain outstanding alternate revenue bonds of the city, authorizing the execution of a bond order in connection therewith, pledging certain revenues of the city, providing for the imposition of taxes to pay for the same, authorizing the execution of an escrow agreement in connection therewith, and authorizing the sale of said bonds to the purchaser thereof. Having been read once by its title and having laid it on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection, be adopted as presented.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Mingus.
This one, as we reported last time, the long-term bond rates have significantly improved in what would be in our favor. And retiring those initial 2010A bonds will save the city the amount up to $101.5 million over the remaining life of 14 years that were on those bonds.
Very good. Any discussion by the council? Hearing none, roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
Aye.
Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you. Commissioner Hill, before you begin, I should have noted at the beginning of the meeting that ordinance number 4459, an ordinance amending the residency provision of the City of East Peoria Personnel Policy Manual, has been pulled for this evening. We'll bring that back at a later time, and I should have disclosed that up front, so I apologize.
Okay, item number 2. Let's see, make sure I'm not out of order. All right. Be it resolved by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Illinois, that Resolution 1920-068, hereto attached to resolution approving new sign lease agreement with Adams Outdoor Advertising LP for 2200 East Washington Street, Felipe Building, be approved. Mr. Mayor, I move that this resolution number 1920-068 be accepted on its first reading and be read, and as it read by its title, and be laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Angus.
Okay, what this is, as most people may have noticed, there on East Washington, out in front of the Felipe Building, is a billboard. And on one side, it's digital. On the other side, it is static. And this agreement, the sign went up there in 2008, and our agreement with them is up. And in order for, there was an issue with the existing digital sign. In order for Adams to find it cost-effective to replace the entire sign, we're entering into a 10-year agreement so that we can do that. Now, as a benefit to the city, we get time on that sign. We can promote city events and city announcements and et cetera. And so there is a advantage to the city for that sign as well. Did I miss anything, Ty?
You covered it well, thank you.
Any discussion?
I'll say when that sign first came in, to me, pollution, almost sign pollution in our town concerned me. However, they have done a good job of maintaining that sign, the property, and the things that go on to that billboard. So I hear people, or since it's been in, I've heard people make positive comments about that. It's always been a concern to me to have too many things like that around, but I do think they do a good job. I'll support it.
Any other comments? Hearing none, roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
Aye.
Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you.
One more item, Mr. Mayor, move you that ordinance number 4460 hereto attached, an ordinance adding a new section 189 to the city code establishing a fund balance policy for the city of East Peoria be read at length by the clerk, and that said ordinance number 4460 be accepted on its first reading and hereby adopted as presented.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Dingus, Decker. Yeah.
Ordinance number 4460, an ordinance adding new section 1-8-9 to the city code establishing a fund balance policy for the city of East Peoria. Whereas the city maintains a general corporate fund into which are deposited the general receipts and revenues generated and received by the city from various designated and undesignated sources and from which are paid various general bills and expenses incurred in the regular day-to-day operations of the city. Such funds have been designated in the city's general fund, whereas the city operates a combined waterworks and sewerage system, the system for providing a potable water supply and wastewater treatment and disposal services for the residents and businesses of the city. And whereas the city maintains a separate and segregated fund designated the waste sewer fund, into which are deposited the receipts and revenues generated from the system, and from which are paid expenses incurred in the operations and maintenance of the system. And whereas the City Council has determined that it is in the best interest of the city to maintain certain minimum fund balances within the city's general fund and water sewer fund as a means of ensuring the financial stability of each fund and the overall financial well-being of the city. Whereas the City Council further finds that it is in the best interest of the city to reduce these matters into a formal written policy creating and setting forth the minimum balance requirements as provided herein that will be applicable to the City Council and to future councils. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Tazewell County, Illinois, that Section 1, the above recitations are found to be true and correct and are hereby incorporated herein. Section 2, Title 1, Chapter 8, Section 9 is hereby added to the City Code for the City of East Peoria as follows. 1-8-9 Fund Balance Policy for City of East Peoria. 1-8-9.1 Purpose. In order to follow best practices of government accounting, the purpose of this policy is to ensure the city's financial stability by protecting itself against revenue shortages caused by economic downturns, natural disasters, policy changes instituted by the state or federal governments, or any unpredicted one-time expenditures. This policy establishes the minimum unassigned fund balance pursuant to generally accepted accounting principles to be maintained in the city's general fund and water sewer fund. 1-8-9.2 General Fund. The city shall maintain a minimum unassigned fund balance equal to 60 days of general fund revenues as determined from year to year based upon the fiscal year budget approved by the City Council. 1-8-9.3 Water Sewer Fund. The city shall maintain a minimum unrestricted fund balance equal to 60 days of water sewer revenues as determined from year to year based upon the fiscal year budget approved by the City Council. 1-8-9.4 Use of Funds. Upon recommendation by the mayor, the City Council can approve the use of the unassigned funds in either the general fund or water sewer fund by resolution in the case of economic downturns, natural disasters, policy changes instituted by the state or federal governments, or any unpredicted one-time expenditures. The resolution shall state the reason and necessity for the use of the funds and a plan for replenishment of the fund back to the minimum level. No such resolution shall be effective unless approved by a 3/4 majority vote of the corporate authorities of the city then holding office. Section 3 of this ordinance is hereby ordered to be published in pamphlet form by the city clerk, and said clerk is ordered to keep at least 3 copies hereof available for public inspection in the future and in accordance with the Illinois Municipal Code. Section 4 of this ordinance is in addition to all other ordinances on the subject and shall be construed therewith except as to that part in direct conflict with any other ordinance, and in the event of such a conflict, the provisions hereof shall govern. Section 5 of this ordinance shall be in full force and effect after its passage, approval, and 10-day period of publication in the manner provided by law.
Okay. The establishing a fund balance. Obviously, the city did not have a fund balance policy, and in order to, as the reading stated there, to strengthen our financial position, so it has to do with having the fund balance improves or at least sustains our rating level. Is that right, Mr. Becker?
Yes, having this policy in effect helps increase our bond rating.
Okay. And, you may have heard in there that the rate or the amount is being set at 60 days related to the budget. And to give you numbers that I believe Mr. Becker had passed through in the communication for on 4/13, we had a fund balance in our general fund of a little over $5.4 million. And using the current guidelines, it'd be looking for a fund balance of at least $5 million. So we, as of 4/13 of 18, our balances are above this minimum. But again, this is audited based on our audit years, and we haven't had the results of this year.
Other comments from the council? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple nights ago, first of all, I'm impressed with Mr. Becker. People that know me know that I stay up late, and I think it was about 12:30 or so, midnight or so, that I sent an email to him. It's just what I do. And within a couple minutes, he calls me back. I was tied up at the time and couldn't answer, but I appreciate his work. He's always working hard on stuff like this, trying to help people like myself understand finances to his degree. But when I looked at those numbers, when we, a few years ago, decided to enact the sales tax, it was decided that we would try to build a fund balance. So in the future, if we had disasters, problems, we didn't want to have to take out loans. We wanted to have quote-unquote rainy day fund to make sure that we can take care of the things that we need. When I first looked at those numbers, it looked to me like we had increased our fund balance to a tune of about $2 million a year. That was not the intention. But what I learned from looking at those numbers, there is money that's available, shows that we are positive, and then there's available cash on hand. The available cash on hand, if I remember from a conversation that Jeff and I had today, that I believe it's somewhere around $3 million. Am I correct, Jeff?
As of today, it's about 2.8.
2.8. And I believe the goal of that fund to be somewhere around 4. And so I think we're doing well, and I'm happy we are. It's good to have those funds available. Everybody wants to put as much money as we can into streets, and I think that once we get to that amount, being able to maintain that and then even utilize that money to put as much more as we can into streets. But I appreciate that. I think he's doing a good job, and I'm glad to see that growing.
Very good. Other comments from the council? Hearing none, I think it's the prudent thing to do. I appreciate the fact that this came up, and quite honestly, the city, it was pointed out that we didn't have one in place a few years back here, so it was highly recommended that we do it. It's the prudent thing to do, so. Thanks, Jeff, for your hard work on this. No other comments? Roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
Aye.
Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Commissioner Decker.
Nothing right now, Mayor.
Commissioner Sutherland.
Once again, nothing today.
Okay. Commissioner Mingus.
I have 3 items, Your Honor. Be it resolved by the Council of the City of East Peoria that Resolution Number 1920-065 hereto attached to resolution approving a collective bargaining agreement between the City of East Peoria and the International Association of Firefighters, Local 1498, for a period beginning May 1st, 2019 and terminating on April 30th, 2024 be approved. Mr. Mayor, I move that this resolution number 1920-065, having been read once by its title and having laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection, be adopted as presented.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. I'll focus on the contract. I know there has been some conversation related to the vote on the contract, but if that comes up, that comes up. I'll focus on the contract. Like I said last week, I think this is a fair contract for both sides. It's not great for either side, but it's fair. It was negotiated in good faith, and it's due. The only thing I'll add is, and I'll state this again, and I stated it last week or last meeting, this contract starts on May 1st, which if you look at a calendar, we are now on October 15th. So firefighters have been working without a contract since May 1st. And the negotiations for this contract actually started in February and have gone through 2 commissioners before we were able to come up with an agreement that has been voted on once and approved. And so I think it's a good, fair contract, and I'm hoping that we can pass it tonight.
Comments from the council?
Yes.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I have a few words on this. I've thought long and hard about this, and I've spent a lot of time, a lot of hours on this. I want to preface my statement by saying that I didn't support the contract because of residency. I voted no. But that doesn't mean I don't support a contract. But I cannot support Commissioner Decker being a fireman voting on this. So I have prepared a statement. I have some copies. If I mess it up a little bit, you can have a copy if it helps. I urge that a vote on the second reading of this resolution be delayed until the City Council can be advised by a major independent law firm with a written opinion regarding certain issues that exist. Some of my thoughts that we need to visit and get answered are: 1, Commissioner Decker, formerly a fireman and now an assistant fire chief, has been receiving campaign contributions from firefighters' unions. 2, the approval of this contract indirectly but absolutely affects Commissioner Decker's salary and benefit package. Number 3,
just because no case law, nobody's taken it to court yet, there is no case law, is directly in the point, at the point present time does not mean it's okay to vote when the appearance of a conflict of interest is present. Number 4, think about this. Commissioner Decker is his boss's boss, and now he wants to vote on the fire department business. I have contacted a law firm, Ansel and Glink, a major law firm that specializes in municipal law, and about whether or not a member of the East Peoria City Council, who is also an assistant fire chief, can cast a deciding vote on a resolution approving a 5-year contract between local firefighters union and the city of East Peoria. I have advised them that historically the salary and the benefits of an assistant fire chief increases when the income and the benefits of the firefighters increase. I also advise them that the assistant fire chief receives campaign contributions from firefighters unions. If we go ahead and allow Commissioner Decker to vote without the benefit of outside legal opinion, we are taking the chance that a contract might be approved that turns out to be illegal, and such a hasty move could easily result in a very expensive litigation. Ansel and Glick have advised me that they would be willing to provide such an opinion for a fee of $250 per hour to time spent preparing for such an opinion, and that they expect it will take no longer than 12 hours. Again, I urge that the vote on the second reading of this resolution be delayed until the City Council can receive such an opinion from Ansel and Glick. So at this time, Mr. Mayor, I move you that resolution number 1920-065, resolution approving collective bargaining agreement between the City of East Peoria and the International Association of Firefighters Local 1498 for a period beginning May 1st, 2019 and terminating on April 30th, 2024 be tabled.
May I have a second?
For what duration are we tabling, asking?
Well, it is my intention, we could do a straw vote right now. It's a maximum, I believe, of $2,750. Now, this law firm here, if I could explain them just a little bit, they are the gold standard for municipal attorneys in Illinois. They've written the laws, and nearly every municipality goes to them or their website all the time getting and gathering information.
Just real quick, gentlemen. So you made a motion to table it. Before we get into discussion, the question was specifically a timeline.
Okay.
So
I'm
is
going to
the
have to ask for
timeline
a straw
until you
vote
have a...
then. I believe if it's $2,750, that's the only thing that would hold me back from having a recommendation done by next city council meeting. Because if I legally can't spend the money before then I can't get it done by then. If I take a straw vote tonight from you guys and have the majority say yes to spend the money and start the process, I was told that they absolutely positively have it done by next city council meeting next month, first part.
Separate from that, I have reached out to the Office of the Attorney General seeking an opinion from the highest legal authority in the state. I suspect that, and that's just a matter of due diligence, that's nothing personal against anybody on this council, but it was clear after our last vote that we were going to have a divided council on this matter. So, as we seek these legal opinions from multiple law firms, I felt like going to the ultimate legal authority was the right thing to do. I suspect that's going to take weeks, if not months, to get a response or any type of information back from them, just based on the process. So I will disclose that in front of the council this evening, separate from his request here. So with regards to a straw poll, is what you're specifically asking if people are willing to spend additional monies outside of what we have already incurred with the city attorney's office. Is that correct?
Correct.
I may be wrong on this, Your Honor, but I think that would fall under discussion, which we'd have to have a second before we could do that.
I tend to agree. So just to make everybody clear, because this is a first for us and we didn't do it in the last council, but he sought a motion to table it. Just by seconding it opens up discussion. A roll call is what either approves it or it doesn't pass.
Okay, second.
Okay. We have a second. That was Commissioner Hill. So now we'll open up the discussion. So your ask is?
My ask is to, and this is a maximum of 12 hours at $250 an hour. It's going to be around $2,750 to get them, and I have talked to them, and they said that I talked to them through email, they would do this, and it would be in a timely fashion where we can get on with this and either approve this contract or not, with or without Dan Decker's vote. And I'm willing, me personally, I'm willing to take a look at their recommendation very, very hard. And if they disagree with me, then I think I can stand aside. But we have a problem with some of the things that came back that I was reading, and it wasn't until I put it in print on paper that I was able to understand this a little bit. And for instance, there's a couple sentences here that just clearly contradict itself to me, and it says, this is from our city attorney. It cannot be predicted with any degree of certainty whether a conflict of interest will be found in this matter. The appearance of a conflict and the benefit to the public confidence and the impartiality of the city's governing body is a different matter and warrants serious consideration. Now, that was from our own attorney. And then the second line that, and I could have highlighted a lot of these, but I didn't want to bore everybody to death. The second one, basically it says, well, it does say, it says, however, to the extent that he enjoys a personal benefit as a result of the CBA, which is a collective bargaining agreement, the assistant chief would be prohibited by common law from voting on the collective bargaining agreement. And the line before says that he wouldn't have a direct impact by this contract, but he does have a direct impact by this contract. Absolutely, because for the next 5 years, his wages will depend upon this contract that we're approving. Then it says, there is no legal authority which clearly prohibits the assistant fire chief from voting on the CBA, the contract. That said, given the lack of legal authority, it is impossible to predict with any certainty how a court would rule on this matter. Any number of speculative, indirect, personal benefits could be attributed to the assistant chief. So, with those gray areas there, how can we possibly allow this to happen without a challenge?
Mayor, you mind if I talk for a second?
Yeah.
Obviously. obviously, I'm in a strange situation. I was promoted to assistant chief. So then it was asked of me, since I'm no longer in the bargaining unit, can I and will I vote? Mr. Sutherland paraphrases at best that decision, because he only is pointing out certain parts of it. That decision was 8 pages, I believe. And the opinion basically for 8 pages talked about the arguments for and arguments against, but took no definitive stand, as he does point out. But there are a couple things that he said that just, my salary, my benefits are not determined by that contract, not at all. The council could choose to give assistant chiefs 0 wage increases over the next 5 years. Has nothing to do with that contract. There are a couple things I'd like to say. When I was asked about whether or not I should vote, I did quite a bit of research, received an initial opinion, and then I spoke with Mr. Triggs. Mike talks about that law firm. I don't know who they are. Gold Standard says that they're going to put 12 hours into this decision. I believe Miller Hall and Triggs recently, this week, put 30 to 40 hours into a decision. I'll let Dennis tell for sure. Maybe not that many. Okay, that was my thought before. But they put an awful lot of time into deciding whether or not it was legal or not. Now, when I initially asked him, he did not put that much time, no cost to the city. I just asked him if he believed it was legal, and he said he did believe it was legal. So those were 2 opinions that I received that both stated that it was legal. So there, it was asked of me, not only is it legal to vote, but if it is legal to vote, do I have the right not to vote, is the way I looked at it. Because I think you can tell it's a split vote up here. So I'm kind of put into a position of, if I don't vote, it dies. And I do believe that if it dies, I believe the firefighters are going to go to arbitration. I believe that because on September 11th, the union voted to go to arbitration. Arbitration is extremely expensive for the city. And when you give the case to an arbitrator, you let someone else decide what's going to happen for the city. That will cost so much more than the contract that is in front of us tonight. So when asked of me if I'm willing to vote, if it is legal, yes, I'm willing to vote. And we have, as far as knowledgeable law firms on municipal law, I believe we have one of the most knowledgeable law firms on municipal law. Dennis is very, he doesn't like to toot his own horn, but 40 plus years of experience. He knows what he's doing. Somebody in his office gave their opinion. They came to the same conclusion that Dennis came to, which is why I am, not only do I feel like trusting them that it's legal to vote, now I feel like I have an obligation to vote. So, as I said to Scott 2 weeks ago when he asked me the question, it's not always comfortable to vote on things. When the marijuana issue came up, that wasn't comfortable. I think my mom's still mad at me about the decision that I made. But I had an obligation to vote, and that's what I'm willing to do tonight. I do want to make sure it's legal. I believe I have made sure it's legal, at least to the best of the ability of some very good attorneys. They do believe it's legal. As he stated, there is no way to decide until a court ultimately decides, and that would take who knows how long to get there. For me, the contract we can talk about if we get to that point of actually voting on that issue. But my fear is that we go to arbitration. It's going to be a heck of a lot more expensive for the city. I believe since I am no longer in the bargaining unit, I do believe I have an obligation to vote. And Dennis, I mean, I've spoken for you. I'd like for you to speak now, if you would.
Well, the subject obviously is a complex, raises a complex question, and as the elected officials know as we try to answer the question as to whether or not it be a conflict of interest for Commissioner Decker to vote on the approval of the collective bargaining agreement. We looked at what case law is available. We looked at the statutes. We looked at some commentary from the Illinois Municipal League. And we had a lot of reservations, which are expressed in a communication to the council. So I'll have to get direction from the mayor as to how much discussion he wants. If you want an hour, I could give it to you, because we looked at it very carefully. One thing, though, that probably should clarify, it's not a big deal with me, but the attorney who wrote the memorandum that's been referred to that was presented to the council expended 19 hours on the project in discussion with her, as we frequently do, tried to figure out, was all that time give value to the city, or was there any time spent sort of spinning your wheels and figuring out what the issue is? That's a common practice in our law firm, and hopefully in most of them. And we agreed that we should bill for 15 hours. The hourly rate is $179. I'm not remembering the math, so somebody do 15 times 179. So, Commissioner, it's not 30 or 40 hours. I will tell you, though...
That's my mistake. That's what I had heard.
Right. But I will tell you what is missing from that is my own time. And my own time is, I can't really quantify that for you because I did not write the memorandum. As a matter of fact, as I've shared with the council, my direction was for this attorney, who I have enormous confidence in and is very bright, for her to undertake this analysis as if she didn't know what the community was, she didn't know who the players were, she didn't know what outcome they wanted to have. That was the charge. I think she did that to the best of her ability, that is, to be objective. And when I refer to the 15 hours, that's her time. My time, it's very difficult to quantify because I'll have conversations with elected officials that'll cover a lot of different subjects. And it's very difficult to say, well, how much of that related to this particular question? Most of my conversations in time, well, some of it, by the way, is covered by retainer, like this meeting, like when I meet with the mayor on Monday morning, like when I go to a staff meeting on Tuesday morning. So that's not time you can quantify, and it doesn't cost the city any additional money. It's part of a monthly retainer that the time we expend is about 3 times what we get paid for, but that's welcome because it puts people at ease. That means after this council's meeting's over, if somebody wants to talk to me, they're not looking at the clock. They owe me all night. So at any rate, enough of that, but I wanted to correct what the commissioner thought might be the cost of what's been done so far. As to the more important substantive issue, we have, it's apparent, we have rendered an opinion that Commissioner Decker can vote, but it was with lots of reservations and qualifications. Ansel Glinken Diamond's a firm I'm very familiar with. I've dealt with them for 30 or 40 years. They're among the really outstanding municipal law firms in the state. They're not alone. There's several. Most of them are based in Chicago. We probably have the largest practice downstate Illinois ourselves. Getting more opinions could be informative. People might like where they come down more than where we come down. In the final analysis, I would volunteer one comment: there will only be an opinion. And the same thing for that matter with the Attorney General. This is pure speculation. I think the Attorney General might render an opinion. The further speculation is I think it'll take many weeks, if not months, to get that opinion. But when it's all said and done, it'll be an opinion. And sometimes we disagree with the Attorney General. Usually we don't. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we disagree with Ansel Glinken Diamond, sometimes we don't. So I think their opinion is valuable because they're skilled attorneys. I think the Attorney General has, Attorney General, by the way, is not going to write the opinion. He has a large staff, overworked staff, but there's a lot of good people there. Their opinions will have value. But I wouldn't, what I don't want to do is talk against the suggestion you get another opinion. That's absolutely up to the council, and all I will say on it is do keep in mind it's going to be an opinion. That's all.
Just a quick question, Dennis, in regards to Commissioner Sutherland's ask of the council to take a straw poll. So with his ask to retain outside legal opinion on the subject matter, as a commissioner, he has a spending threshold. Is that something that would require council action, or is that something the commissioner has the authority to do on his own accord with that
My
authority?
reaction to that is twofold. Number one, I think the issue that we're talking about and spending money to get another opinion, I'm not sure that's noticed up under the Open Meeting Act, and I'm not sure that a straw poll is enforceable. But let me add, and I'm also, traditionally when we talked about the authority that a commissioner had to authorize expenditure of money, at least in my experience, whatever, 40 years, whatever, I've been doing this with this council, it's been within their department. So, Commissioner Sutherland, unless you think I'm going somewhere else, I think it is appropriate to see if commissioners are supportive of that. And if they are supportive of that, without getting into the niceties of whether it's your department or not, or what your limit is, I think if it's the majority will of this council as expressed tonight to do that, you ought to do it.
Fair enough, thank you.
And as a matter of fact, as Commissioner Sutherland raises the question, but as the Chief Executive Officer and as the Mayor, if that's the will of the majority of this council to spend that money, I think it is lawful and appropriate to do that without having the item on the agenda, without having it an official vote taken. You can spend that money, I think, as Mayor, as Chief Executive Officer of the city, whose your powers are they're about as hard to define sometimes as a conflict of interest. But I'm very comfortable that you can spend up to $3,000 if that's the will of the majority of the council.
Thank you. Open it up to the commissioners for more discussion.
I have a couple things, Your Honor. I understand wanting to get another opinion. My issue with wanting to get another opinion is we've had 3 opinions, or at least 3 opinions have been rendered to Commissioner Decker. One from somebody he personally asked. Dennis Triggs has given his opinion, and we had another attorney out of his firm give an independent opinion without consulting with Dennis, the way I understand it. Last year, the city of East Peoria spent $579,613 on legal fees. So if we're going to question if we're going to question this decision that our city attorneys that we have paid, and I did the math, it's $2,685 for anybody who didn't do it, that we paid Miller, Hall, and Triggs to render this decision. If we're going to question this decision, what would keep us from questioning the $579,000? And I think we have to be aware, the public needs to be aware, that if this is tabled and if this does not get voted on, there is a chance, I would say a very good chance, that this could go to arbitration. We've spent $275,156 up to this point this fiscal year on attorney's fees. It's out of our budgeted $571,000. So if you do quick math, we are already over budget on attorney's fees. If you do the math, that's 5.5 months. we're over. And I don't think the city can afford arbitration at this point. And knowing that we have contract negotiations going on or will start or continue with the police here pretty quick that could end up in arbitration as well, we could be far over our budget with attorney's fees. And every dollar we spend on attorney's fees for something that we don't have to is money that we could be putting in the roads or public safety or whatever the case may be. I'll echo what I heard Dennis say. Another opinion is just that. It's just an opinion. And I'm going to guess, I'm not an attorney, but I'm going to guess, and I'll go back. I do deal with law in my current profession. And I do know this, that minus case law, the only thing you get is certain, when you get certain, is when a court actually rules on something. So until the court actually rules on this, there will be no definitive answer. And Dennis, will you correct, if I'm wrong, please correct me.
No, the only way you ultimately get a definitive answer is to have a court rule, and then for that decision to be appealed until you get to the point where there is no more appeal, either because the time has run out or there's no higher court to go to. So in this case, it would be the state circuit court that would decide, Tazewell County. Then there is an appeal to the 3rd District, which sits in LaSalle. And then there is the possibility of an appeal to the state Supreme Court, but the state Supreme Court only takes those cases that the court chooses to hear. So that's when you would know for sure. I think for maybe because this has received the attention that it has, maybe it's worthwhile for the public to know what the commissioners know, and that is that we're here because of a law that permits firefighters, unlike police officers or any other employee, to hold public office. And so part of, without going into a lot of detail, part of what we have to sort out is that if they can hold that public office, then in this case, Commissioner Decker, we've dealt with this now for 12 years.
12 years.
What can he vote on? What can he not vote on? Can he vote on the budget? That's where the assistant chief's salary is going to come out of.
If you're asking me, I would say no,
I'm not
but
asking,
you're not.
I'm not asking anybody, but I'm giving you an
It's
example.
where all of our salaries come out of.
Everybody's salaries. That's correct.
So we would never be able to
Mayor.
vote.
So the commissioners and mayor not vote on that? I mean, it is not an easy question. And I want to say, because the opinion that I rendered is it's not, I think, Mike, what you would prefer. But I understand your question. I understand your frustration. But it sort of all goes back to that statute that firefighters, and I think Commissioner Decker, because he enjoys serving on the council, is champions of that statute. A whole lot of people aren't. But it creates issues for which there is no easy answer. There will be no easy answer. And if you ask 5 attorneys, you might get 5 different opinions.
If I could finish, Your Honor. So my view is if we delay this, all we're going to end up doing is costing the city more money. And I think we've established at these council meetings that that's not something that we have a lot of is money. We're going to talk about police cars in a minute, and somebody came up and said that's a lot of money for police cars, and it is, and I support that. I support purchasing those police cars, but money isn't something we have a lot of. Delaying this is going to get us another opinion. It'll be an opinion. We could turn around and say, well, let's get another opinion. But we're already above budget on our attorney's fees. We spend a boatload of money on those. And if we're going to start questioning what our attorneys tell us, I think that's a dangerous road to go down. Thank you.
If I could jump back in for just a moment. Here.
Allow Commissioner Hill to speak first, please.
I didn't take even the second lightly. Before this meeting, I too did research, and as Mr. Triggs alluded to, the Public Act 94-316 that gives the firefighters the right to be on a board. But there's also case law, but it deals with a police officer, and that has to do with Roger versus Tinley Park. It was a police officer that wanted to be a part of the trustee. And long story short, the appellate court upheld, made a decision that because the police officer's position is subordinate to the village trustees, it was what they call incompatibility of offices. So there's 2 points besides the public act, in my mind, the public act that makes it okay for a fireman to be on a board or city council. Then you have incompatibility of offices and conflict of interest. And so those are the elements that you also have to uphold, and I know our legal advice looked at those, and as we've already heard, it was not definitive. It can't be definitive, and then what we heard here, even if we get another opinion, it will go to a court case. Now, the question I asked Dennis, Mr. Triggs here, is that if regardless of this council, if somebody brings suit against the city, how much money are we going to rack up going through the court process, obviously lower court, appellate court, and the Supreme Court, when somebody brings suit to us?
Well, first, I think the Tinley Park case you referred to is what prompted the legislation. So the firefighters lobbied and didn't like that result. Therefore, the statute comes after that and in reaction to that decision. But as to your question, very hard to answer. If this matter were to be in court, it could be significant expense. But I don't know what position the city council would take, because to what degree would the council want to spend the money trying to demonstrate that the vote taken was lawful because someone filed a claim saying it was unlawful due to the conflict of interest. So the threshold question, I think, would be with what vigor and to what extent would the city council fight that? Because one approach might be to say, I'm not advising this or recommending it, but I'm trying to point out the realities, might be that we just really want a decision. And the council might therefore not spend a great deal of money trying to influence the outcome. It would simply be a question of allowing the court to enter a ruling. And then the council would decide whether or not it wanted to appeal whatever ruling was forthcoming. So I don't want to be naive about that. There is, at the very least, it's human nature that people, if you would vote, if you would not table this, there'd be a vote tonight, and it would, with Commissioner Decker's vote, pass approval, so the collective bargaining agreement would then be executed in place, and then someone could come along and demonstrate that they had standing. That means they were a person who had a right to file a claim. I don't think that'd be hard to do, by the way, to demonstrate you had standing. And then essentially the court would be asked to, I'm not sure, I can't do the pleadings here in my head, but essentially the relief sought would be to overturn the decision. It would be close to what's called a declaratory judgment, getting a court to declare that there is or isn't a conflict of interest. Actually, that litigation would not necessarily be very expensive, and how expensive it would be and what it would cost the city would depend upon to what extent a majority of the council would direct that we fight it. Because you wouldn't necessarily have to do that. You could simply enter an appearance and let the court decide without advocating one way or the other. So
Okay.
I'm sorry, that's not a perfect answer, it's the best I can do.
No, because again, to me, that goes to, we're talking $3,000 for a second. You know, again, it's been referred to as a second opinion. We potentially, one thing I don't like, and you'll hear, facts and figures is what I like to move off of. And we throw, what if we go to arbitration? It's going to be a lot of money. It's going to be, you know what? We throw a lot of things around. If we enacted, and we were advised based on the legal counsel that if the contract went in and then later nullified, then everything as it, if any money is expended would more than likely be lost. And so there's one clause in here on a buyout, the vacation buyout, if you knew that your contract would potentially be nullified, we may have everybody cashing out, and that's $26,000 right there. That's 12 firefighters times 3 days times 24 hours times an average of $31 an hour. You got $26,000 of instant money out. So for me, to spend $3,000 to get a second opinion is prudent.
Correct me if I'm wrong, if it's null and void, then anything associated with that, including the sick time buyout and increases, would also be null and void, correct?
Well, yes, it would be null and void, but the comment that Commissioner Hill is referring to was a suggestion. It may not be practical to recoup any money that already been paid out. So if people, firefighters were realizing the benefit of the increase in salary of 1.5%, to try to recoup that, and I was suggesting that as a practical, not a legal matter. To try to recoup that, I thought would not likely happen, and I thought that because there would be nothing to recoup if you would then go to the bargaining table, you would have to end up with an increase that was less than 1.5%, or there'd be nothing to recoup. So if you end up with a wage freeze, and to the extent you had for a month or 4 months or a year, paid the 1.5% increase, then theoretically you could try to recover that. I didn't regard that as being practical. As to the sick leave buyout, how many people would have that payout made before there'd be some resolution, I don't know. But that potential, as the Commissioner Hill has indicated, is there. And the process of trying to recover that would be burdensome. I think probably theoretically there's a basis for it. If people are overpaid, a municipality can seek to recoup their money. So my commentary in that regard was not intended to be a well thought out legal proposition. It was a practical observation.
I'm just going to weigh in because we have two motions, and I'll speak to the first, and that is to approve the agreement as written and presented to the council tonight. I stated at the last council meeting that I wouldn't support it, and I stated why. We talked here this evening, we talked the last council meeting about bargaining in good faith. To me, bargaining in good faith is ensuring that both parties have a clear understanding of what's laid on the table. That didn't happen with this council. I'm not saying it was intentional, but there were two monetary provisions that were not shared through multiple discussions that came out when the city attorney's office asked for contract language changes so he can compile the new agreement and send it out to the council members. I went to the commissioner, I went to the chief, and time out here. I was unaware of these. One of them, the commissioner went to the union, they removed it. The other one, I don't even know if it was discussed. I made it clear why I wouldn't support this. There's a monetary provision that's costed to the city, that's guaranteed in writing in that contract, that I did not support, I was unaware of, and I cannot support.
Your Honor, if I may.
So just let me finish real quick,
Okay.
if you don't mind. Because I want to make sure we're all respectful. I knew this was going to be divisive the minute he cast that vote. So here we land, and we're going on 45 minutes of talking about it, and quite honestly, I don't know where it's going to end up. But I made it clear to not just the union, but every member on this council, I really didn't want it to get to this point. We have 4 years to work together. And to sit here and see a divided council right out of the blocks over something, I feel it's an extremely important thing here. I stated why I couldn't support the contract. It hinged on one monetary provision. Don't know if it was discussed, is what was said to me at the last council meeting, that if that was taken out of there, no deal, we're going to arbitration. The city doesn't take the union to arbitration. They vote to take the city there. That's on them. That's how I feel about it. So for the first motion that was laid on the table, if that's how it ends up tonight, I will be another no vote this evening. Second motion was to table it. As I stated, I reached out to the Office of the Attorney General. There is no case law. Nobody denies that. Everybody says the same thing. So until it's tried in court, we'll never know. When you read the statutory law and you read common law, there is a conflict. They absolutely contradict each other. I don't think there's any question. I've said that for the last 4 years of serving on this council, and it's nothing personal against Commissioner Decker. He didn't make it lawful. He didn't make it legal. But he has every opportunity, every right. It is completely legal for him to serve on this council. What's at question is there a conflict of interest being the deciding vote? He's abstained for the last 12 years on a multitude of resolutions and things that have been brought before him. He opted not to. In his humble opinion, he feels like he's got a legal right to cast that vote. I personally disagree with it. I think it is a conflict. And when you read the laws as written, clearly a conflict. We'll never know the outcome unless it's tried in court. But with that being said, out of respect for the commissioner, I know his concerns. I'm very familiar with that law firm. I don't discount Miller, Hall, and Triggs. The end result is likely to be nothing more than another opinion, which it's gray. So until it's tried in court, but I'm of the same mindset of Commissioner Hill, if I understood him correctly. I would support tabling this until we have, I personally prefer an opinion from the Office of the Attorney General. I'm with Dennis. I don't see that coming anytime soon. I know that's a lot to ask, but I think it's the right thing to do. But separate from that, Commissioner, you asked about seeking another outside legal opinion, and I have no reason to deny your request. So.
If I could say one thing, Your Honor, because you referenced not knowing about the sick time buyout, and I just went back. I sent you the contract prior to 9/24. On 9/24, you responded to me asking a question about the education buyout. No question about the sick time buyout. Then on 9/26, you, me, and Chief Knapp, who's not here, sat down at Bob Evans and went over every change. And your words were, I have no problem with that. We talked about doing that 3 years ago. I have no problem with that. I knew about the education credit problem on Thursday, and I contacted Bobby Zimmerman and worked to get that out of the deal. But the sick time buyout was never brought up. It was never brought up to me until 9:30 at approximately 4 o'clock. I remember because I was on my way to a basketball game where you called me and said, hey, what about this sick time buyout? I'm not sure. I had never had any inkling that that was an issue until basically 24 hours before the council meeting.
Okay.
And then we worked and sent information, and that was the 11th hour that I found out that there was a problem. You clearly had that contract in your hand since prior to 9/24 and never brought it up to me. I could have possibly went to them, but I can't do that without 24. And I don't think they would have gone for it. I don't want to speak for them. But, I mean, I went back through everything. I have no documentation of any concern that anybody had with the sick time buyout until 24 hours before the meeting. I'm not sure anybody realizes, and I don't want to kudos, and I don't think Bobby Zimmerman wants to kudos, but the amount of time we spent going through this.
With all due respect, we're not talking about the contract.
And you are right, Mr.
We're talking
Commissioner.
about whether it's right for Commissioner Decker to vote. I mean, we're not going to revisit the contract tonight. We're not doing it.
Well, the motion's laid on the
it's a fair
table,
point.
but I'm not going to get disrespectful here. I have my own set of emails that don't abide by your timeline. I will share with you. So let's get very specific on this sick time buyout. Chief Service and Chief Knapp had that same mindset going into the last contract negotiations. Here's what the reasoning behind it was. So let's get very specific here. I'm going to put the facts on the table. And we did have breakfast after that information was shared. And I did say to Chief Knapp, I'm aware you brought it up 3 years ago. I didn't sit there and say I'd support anything. Is what I said is I was going to go back and take a look at the cost, which I never did get a straight answer on how we were going to pay for that. Is what was said to me was the same mindset 3 years ago, which it made sense 3 or 4 years ago. So the way it works now, anyone that maxes out at 1,344 hours of sick leave, okay? Currently, 12 people qualify for that. They get an additional 3 days of vacation. Okay, so we have 12 individuals qualified for that. 3-4 years ago, you cover that with overtime. That's $1,000 per day. So it made perfect sense why the chief would propose, why don't we buy that time back at 50 cents or 75 cents on the dollar, because we're paying time and a half. I got it. You know what? That discussion was had 3 years ago. They weren't interested in it. It went away. So when he brought it back up this time, and I saw that it was written in that contract, I did, and I have the emails to prove that I did question it. We had a subsequent conversation. So my response was very simply, less than 1 year ago, in this very chamber, I solicited, on behalf of the chief, adding 3 additional firefighters to a cost of the city of about $150,000. The purpose behind that, go back and look in the minutes, was to cut down on the overtime cost that the city was incurring. So we added 3 firefighters a year ago, and now the ask is, hey, we need to buy back this sick time because it's costing us too much in overtime. I have a different philosophy. We addressed that by adding 3 additional firefighters less than a year ago, quite honestly, so to a tune of $150,000. That was my response. I have the emails, so I'm not going to sit up here and argue who's right, who's wrong, who said what. But the emails are very clear as to why I wasn't going to support it, and that is exactly why we hired 3 additional firefighters to cover the overtime cost. So there was no response into, what's the cost benefit to the city now? We've added people to address that. So the mindset behind the sick time buyout was to reduce overtime cost. That's what we added the 3 firefighters for. I couldn't support doing so.
And just one thing, we are still paying overtime in the fire department, just as a side note.
You'll always pay overtime. Every department's going to pay overtime. There's different circumstances for that. No, you'll have time at the end of the meeting.
But I do
You
think
can get
Commissioner
up and-
Sutherland is correct.
Yes,
The motion on the table was.
I would like to
was-
finish my statement I asked for a second ago. I'll be blunt and short, okay? Listen, it's the history of the wages that go to the assistant fire chiefs. He is correct in what he said, that the council could deny him a wage increase this time. But it's the history of how we've done it is how he'll be paid, as far as I know and I'm concerned. That's one thing. We have asked him to turn over his legal, the written legal advice that he got from the Firemen's Union attorney several times, and we have not received that I know of, in writing.
I have not
And
been
we would
asked
not
by
be
him.
having this conversation at all about the contract if we would have went into executive session and hashed out everything word for word like we did with the street department and the sewer and the water department. We went from, it wasn't even on my radar, and then it was in front of me within hours. I had a lot of questions, and I was very uncomfortable with the whole thing. My last thing is just a word, just a sentence for thought. I'm not picking on the fire department because I love you guys. But what if the fire department decided to run a slate of 5 people for city council? Let's say the majority of them got on. What you gonna do? I'm done.
Okay,
one
so
thing, Mayor,
let's.
real quick, let
yeah,
me
yes,
respond to
sir.
something he said. I have never been asked for that legal opinion. Mr. Sutherland has a history of sometimes exaggerating, and I think that's what he's done here. I would gladly get him that opinion. I think Bobby Zimmerman has a copy of that opinion as well. That's no problem. I'll gladly share that with you, but I'm not going to sit here while you say something that's inaccurate.
Okay, here's where we're at. The last motion was to table this. It was seconded, so I would call the vote. We'll do a roll call on tabling.
To the next meeting, is that the, Commissioner Sutherland,
What
is that your
specific,
motion?
what was your,
To table to the
Specifically-
next council meeting?
It says, beginning May 1st, 2019, and terminating April 30th. Well,
that's the contract.
that's a contract.
You made a
No,
motion.
I didn't have a date on it. So I said that this law firm said that they would have a written recommendation next board meeting, the 1st of next month. First Tuesday of next month. That's 3 weeks.
Is that sufficient for you? You seconded it.
That's sufficient for me.
Okay. Roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
No.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
No.
Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
I have 3 ayes and 2 noes, Your Honor.
Thank you. So we have tabled it. We'll bring it back after that opinion is rendered.
I have 2 more items, Your Honor. Be it resolved by the Council of the City of East Peoria that resolution number 1920-066 hereto attached, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement between the city and the county of Tazewell for animal and rabies control services be approved. Mr. Mayor, I move you that this resolution number 1920-066 be accepted on its first reading and read by its title and be laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker.
Thank you, Commissioner Decker. This is an intergovernmental agreement that we have with the county to take care of our animal control. I think citizens recognize that if they do call animal control, it's not East Peoria that comes out, it's Tazewell County Animal Control. And the resolution, I handed it over, I believe is for $27,000 for the year. $28,752.
Very good. Any other comments from the council? Hearing none, roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
Aye.
Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you.
My final item, Your Honor, be it resolved by the Council of the City of East Peoria, Illinois, that resolution number 1920-069 here to attach, resolution authorizing and approving the purchase of 8 2020 Dodge Durango all-wheel drive police service vehicles and the outfitting of such vehicles for the police department in the amount of $333,696 be approved. Mr. Mayor, I move you that this resolution number 1920-069 be accepted on its first reading and read by its title and be laid on the table for no less than 1 week for public inspection.
May I have a second, please?
Yes.
Second.
Which one do you?
Sutherland.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Sutherland.
Thank you, Commissioner Sutherland. As referenced earlier in the meeting, this is a resolution to purchase 8 new squad cars, Dodge Durango SUVs. And as Mayor Call stated, last year we did not purchase any police vehicles. I believe the police department requested 14 for this budget year, and it was approved at 7. I think Deputy Chief Broderick was able to work a deal with Dodge and to get a good deal on the vehicles. And I know we wrecked one and have some insurance money that is going to be put toward the purchase of that 8th vehicle, and I believe a little bit of money out of the police budget to offset any additional cost. So again, it's for 8. We haven't purchased police vehicles in a year, and they're Dodge Durangos. They'll be outfitted with cameras and lights and radios.
Commissioner, or Mayor, or I guess Chief, could you, I am supportive of this. I know we had a huge discussion a few years back when we switched to the Explorers. So could you just talk about the switch to the Durangos?
One of the things is that we looked at, we don't have any real issues with the Ford, the platform of it. But one of the things is they did increase the cost of the Ford Explorer. So one of the things we looked at, since there were no vehicles given to the police department last year, was there a possibility of how could we look to other things? Deputy Chief Broderick did an extremely good job of looking. He researched and found that the Dodge Durango platform did not increase their cost. So we were able to look at some research and found that the potential for us to get an 8th vehicle out of the money allotted to us was where we're at. So going with the Dodge Durango, he did some research. We've talked to different departments that have that platform. Most of them are satisfied with it. So the idea of really switching from the Ford Explorer was more of looking at what could we get for the money allotted to us, and with that was go with a potential 8th vehicle for the Dodge Durango. So it was really more about what could we get. We could get 8 vehicles as opposed to 7. Is a reason why we went to it. We are happy with the Dodge or the Ford Explorer platform, but it was just, once again, is when I can look at 8 vehicles as opposed to 7, when I got none last year, I'm probably going to look at the potential to go for the 8th vehicle. And as you said, with the increase, we're only looking at approximately $5,700 increase out of already allotted funds for us. So we're not asking for any additional monies from the council on this. So really it was the choice between 7 vehicles or 8. We chose to go with 8 vehicles is why we went with the Dodge Durango platform.
Thank you.
I wanted to thank Deputy Chief Broderick. He shared the maintenance records and the vehicles. There's, and again, I stopped counting. I think there was, in the neighborhood of, in the 2010, 2011, there was at least 11 vehicles. So to answer our resident's question earlier, why? Well, there's that many vehicles in the vintage year of 2010, 2011 that need replacing in the maintenance records is what he shared of the details related to those cars. And then when there's a slew of them at 2013s, again, as you start to look at, they're 6 years old. And so as we have that, the police department has a program where they're rolling over those cars. That's why and as Chief mentioned, the 8th car comes as a result as one getting hit by a deer. And so the difference, it did go over the budget amount of $315K by 5,700 or whatever, but that's coming out of a police department statutory account. So this is a good deal for the city to remove those very old vehicles, or start to.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out with Deputy Chief Broderick, and he's done this for a number of years, quite honestly, before I was on this council. I remember going through the budget retreats, and he'd always bring forward maintenance cost of the vehicles they were hoping to rotate out. The city still has 14 Impalas, according to our records, and we spend a substantial amount on the maintenance to keep those going. So that was their ask, to replace all 14, and the previous council approved to purchase 7. Commissioner Hill's right, we had a 2015 Explorer strike a deer and it totaled it out. So we received the check in the amount of $13,000, and the $5,286 is covered by line 030000185, so it's all within budget.
The one thing we did point out is actually that's going to be like $56.96 because we have looked at for the striping scheme, so there's an additional $90 on that.
Okay.
But so it is still going to be under. So it's the 52 is going up several $100s, but it is still covered under the statutory police vehicle fund.
Correct, and I think in that fund we have about $25,000, I think.
Yes, and that fund can only be used for certain items, so it's not like we're statutorily controlled about what we can spend out of it, what we cannot. So this.
And then I know one of the questions that I had as well, the Durangos, how do they compare up against Ford Explorers? And Deputy Chief did a good job of providing me that information. And I even went a step further, not that I don't trust his judgment, but Sheriff Lauer, the Sheriff's Department, had switched to Durangos for their fleet vehicles, and they're very pleased with them. Matter of fact, I think they just purchased more. So.
And like I said, it's not that we have any issues with the Ford platform. It's just a fact of we can get more bang out of our buck, really, and get an 8th vehicle as opposed to a 7th. If we were able to get an 8th vehicle from a Ford, we would be more than happy to stay with that platform. It's just one of those that both are good patrol platforms for us, so we don't think we're losing out with either platform.
Perfect. Thanks, Chief. Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
Aye.
Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Mingus. Public comment. Anyone in the audience wishing to address the council on a non-agenda item, please step forward.
After a very heavy session tonight, how about a commercial? Again, I'm here to invite the residents of the city to participate, who are former military or active military, to participate in our East Peoria Veterans Day Parade this November 9th. It's on a Saturday. Come on down. We're behind the Goodwill store, and we will march from there to the back of the library. And I'm also here to make sure there's no more parade changes. I was
No, sir. We were both in the same meeting.
okay. Very good. All right, just checking. Anyhow, we do have some special attractions coming to this parade. We have a actual World War II landing craft that the troops used when they hit the beaches, and also we have one of the vinyl-clad tractors that pull trailers, semi-trucks, trailers, tractors. They are completely in patriotic theme, really, really pretty things. So those were two big highlights of the parade coming down. So if you want to see something pretty nice and historic, guys, come on, everybody come on down and see our parade on the 9th of November. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Good job. Oh, what time's the parade, George?
Oh, yes, very good point. 1 o'clock is our show-up time, and 1:30 we step off.
Okay.
And it's from where to where, sir?
It's
Just-
from Columbia Street, and it'll come up Washington and turn on Richland here and end up in the parking lot right over here.
Oh, yeah, and following that, the parade participants are invited to our Veterans Day Bash held at the Post.
And that's the VFW Post 2078 down on Meadow.
That's correct.
Yes, sir.
And from 3 to 5, so
Perfect.
see y'all there.
All right. Thanks, George. Good job. Miss Rachel.
Hi, guys. It's been a while since I've been up here. I just wanted to come and let you guys know how frustrated I am, how Public Works did a number on my property for Trash Week. My frustration comes from when a city member from City Public Works comes down, and it was so insulting. He was very closed-minded. It was suggested that my property look like that beforehand. I don't really have a tractor that's going to take a chunk out of my front yard. The mayor came down, Decker came down, Rick Samosky came down. They all had a different opinion than this first person. It was then asked, because we had a contractor, the first week of August come, there is a pile of dirt there that is settling because something that was dug there. It was suggested that everything else that was done back in August. I finally said, I'm done with this conversation. I'll talk about it at the meeting. I went in. Rick Samosky called, very apologetic. Everybody that I had talked to prior was great. I asked them to not mess with that dirt pile as it's settling. Their fix was to come and take that dirt pile and then just spread it all over everywhere. It looks just as bad now as it did when they got done. There was a ton of garbage left around. It's frustrating as a citizen that I can say, I have video of all of this, and that still wasn't good enough. Like, I don't know how much more crystal clear on that could be. That was shut down right away. I would just like to maybe suggest that if anybody from the city is going to come down and talk to citizens, maybe do it with an open mind. It's almost like they came down with the decision that it was my fault. Well, I don't know what your property looked like beforehand, when I can guarantee it didn't look like that. I think that I probably wouldn't have been as frustrated if somebody, it wasn't until you three came down and said, hey, this is very fresh, it's frustrating, and I don't think that anybody from the city should come down to anybody's house and talk to them and treat them the way that whole situation was handled. I've also asked Dan, I don't want the city to come back down and fix it. Bill Bassham is an amazing neighbor, and he's going to come and he's going to get us situated. I've talked to Dan if we have an issue in the spring with how this is settling, because I don't know anything about that, that they're going to come and take care of it then. But I just kind of wanted to go on record, and you can't be showing up at people's houses like that, talking like that, and yeah, so.
Fair enough. Duly noted. Thanks, Rachel.
How we all doing?
Mr. Harris?
My name's John Harris. I live on Lakewood Avenue. I also work for the city. But I'm here because I am a taxpayer and I care for my city. Junk Week, though. Junk Week turned into a fiasco. This year's Junk Week ended up being 413 tons hauled to the landfill. That's 7 tons more than the last 2 previous years put together. Why? Because people were not following the guidelines the city set out. Junk Week should be for large stuff such as couches, beds, lawn furniture, and other large items that will not fit in your toter. It's not intended for daily garbage, cardboard clothes, and small items that can fit in your toter. Throw it all over the ground. I watched a guy wheel out with a wheelbarrow junk and just dump it and expect the city employees to pick it up. All right, I gave them packages up there, pictures of just mountains of cardboard boxes with stuff dumped in them. That's not what Junk Week's supposed to be. I don't want to see Junk Week be taken away from the good citizens that are using it for the right reasons, for elderly that don't have pickup trucks, that can't get couches, beds, dressers, and big things somewhere else. So I feel the city needs to stiffen up on the people that are abusing it and stop this stuff. We have employees that got cut by broken glass, by nails, boards dumped out there with nails sticking out of them, containers of liquids, no telling what were in those containers. I mean, I hope you guys will stiffen up the rules on this Junk Week so you don't take it away from the people that really need it. Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Anyone else wish to, Mr. Zimmerman?
Good evening. I'm not going to get into the specifics of the contract negotiations, but I do have a question. If we're going to get this other opinion, and if it comes back as the other previous opinions, is the contract going to be supportive?
I will answer you directly.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I know that you're a no, but
Okay.
it was supported 2 weeks ago. And if regardless of how the opinion comes back, if it's not going to be supported, I'm a taxpayer too. Why are we wasting that money?
That's a valid point. I'll let the others answer.
I will support it.
Commissioner?
I will definitely consider it, because again, as we recrunch the numbers related to the buyout, and as it may affect others, but I am more for it than against it.
Okay. And Commissioner Sutherland, you're completely against it as...
No, I've told you, me and you had a nice long talk last.
No, but regardless, it's about the residency, but regardless of the opinion.
That's my whole deal, is
Okay.
about the residency.
And-
So I would still not support it without residency.
The other question that I would ask is either if I could get the contact information of that law firm and also supply an email, just so they have the true facts of the
Absolutely.
information and all that transpired, because it's not the actual contract we're wanting an opinion on. It's whether
The contract has
Commissioner
nothing
Decker
to
did
do
vote.
with it, except
Correct.
for it's the contract.
Right, but I mean, not every department head or non-bargaining unit gets paid the same as the bargaining units. That's well established right now. As far as the raises.
Oh, yeah, no,
and,
no,
I mean,
that's correct, yeah.
but I believe all that needs to be relayed to this law firm so they can make an unbiased opinion.
Well, and I agree. I think that they're probably going to contact the city of East Peoria and ask our financial department and our city clerk all those questions about, when are people paid and how are the wages and stuff. And if you're not in management, if you're not a salary person, I don't know if you would even be able to answer all those questions. So I think that they are going to contact city. I hope they do. One of the things that I was hoping that during this last thing about this whole, nobody contacted me and asked me what my problems were. I will say, though, at the end, his attorney that he had looked this over covered just about everything that I was thinking about. So, I mean, the whole time I was saying, nobody's asked me, no one's talked to me, so.
Right. No, and I mean, I respect if you've been upfront with me from the get-go. I just, if it's not going to get supported, it's a waste to spend that kind of money.
I agree, and I'll make sure you get, I'll give you the information right after the meeting.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Anyone else in the audience wish to address the council?
The thing about
Make it quick, sir.
trash pickup week, what happened to the with the brush pickup?
That was going on alongside of the trash pickup or the junk pickup.
I never saw anything out there.
It runs at the same time. The only problem is, and I didn't know this was going on until it had happened, Evidently, the contractor, and we contract that service out, was behind. I have had a few calls from people that were missed. In fact, today, I sent a message to one of the foremen about a street being missed, so he's going to make sure. Each time, though, they have followed up and then have shown up after. So I'm sorry if you missed it.
right.
It does go along as well, or with the pickup.
All right, thanks, Commissioner.
No problem.
Anyone else wish to address the council on a non-agenda item? Mr. Norvitz?
So as usual, it's this time of the year, and I saw on TV the city promoting the open burning. The one thing I have to say is at least this year on the commercial that you did state you should talk to your neighbors. Not that anybody does, but at least that's a little bit. It had been burning for a month already. As one of the neighbors, I had to walk up and ask him what he was burning because I couldn't breathe at all. And he told me oiled logs. So it was just smoking like crazy. But Dad did make a comment earlier, which kind of struck my interest, is he saw a sign and he thought about sign pollution. Does anybody ever think about air pollution and the fact that at this time of the year, we pollute our air with something fierce with all the burning that goes on in the city here? And there are a lot of people out there that have respiratory issues and that it does affect. And I've talked about this now, this is probably the 6th year, and we still have done nothing. It's really time that we consider that there needs to be something done with all the burning that goes on here, the pollution, and how it affects people. And even healthy people don't realize the effects that this burning does on them as well. But I just implore you, please consider it. Every year I'm going to stand up here and ask, consider doing something about it. Once again, air pollution is a bad thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Anyone else wish to address the council on a non-agenda item? Seeing no one. Comments from the council. Commissioner Decker.
Yes, sir. First of all, I'll start with cleanup week. Yes, it I believe started 2 weeks ago and got finished sometime during last week. We did fall behind, but as John stated, there was an enormous amount of material. We have tried to, I guess, crack down on some of the rules. The rules are still somewhat vague. Whatever you put out is supposed to fit on a 4x8 sheet of plywood, and it is supposed to be for the larger items because the smaller stuff is supposed to be things that you throw away in your normal garbage. People really take advantage of putting things out to allow the scrappers to go throughout the city to find those items, and that's good because then they could be reused. But as John stated, there are some who have abused the service over the years and have put it at risk for us to lose it. We have in the past had it 2 times a year. I still have my theory that that would be better. I think the cleanup weeks would be smaller, and I think they would be completed in a more timely fashion. The brush pickup is important, and for those people that miss it, I realize how important it is. They've called me. They did run, like I said, very behind, but this afternoon there was only one more that I knew of that was missed that they're going to go back out and pick up. So if there is anybody watching that was missed, please let us know. But we will do our best to make sure that doesn't happen in the future. But come around next year's budget time, we need to have a discussion about cleanup week and how we want to proceed in the future. I did, as you all may notice, Bob Jorgensen isn't here tonight. He comes most often, and he isn't feeling well. So he sent me a message asking me if I would talk about something that's coming to, I believe, the council chambers, at least down to this building. I don't know if it's in this room or one close, but it's going to be a showing of a movie that he wanted everybody to know about. It's called What Lies Upstream, and it's water pollution. Evidently something happened, he believes, in West Virginia on the Dan River. that was just before Flint, Michigan, but it was water pollution that occurred, and it's the story of that and how what the things that we are doing can affect our water supply, getting into the rivers and so on. But it is on Thursday, October 24th, here at the shared space, I believe. It's at least in the building, 6:30 p.m. He said there will be discussion and refreshments after, and he'd like to invite everybody to attend. That's all, Mayor.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Hill?
Just two things. The going with the junk week or cleanup week, as we call it. This week or this year, there was at least a high-tech assistant that was used to document. Ty and Glenn Wetterow created an app that actually helped the Public Works document these massive piles that exceeded the 4x8. So actually, it was a nice way of documenting some of the abusers and being able to address those. So, with that being said, the last Friday Night Lights is this Friday, and it's the trunk and what was the
Friday Night
trunk or
Lights.
treat?
Yeah.
Trunk or treat, yeah. So I wanted to give thanks to Doug McCarty and Rick Swan and the Cars and Coffee group for all those events this year. They were very popular. So I encourage everybody to come out this Friday. It's the last one, as long as I didn't get my dates off again. So that's all I have.
Okay, Commissioner Sutherland.
Two quick things. May I talk about the picture, Chief?
You mean the use of the drone for?
Yeah.
Absolutely, sir.
I didn't know if the drone was a secret.
Drone's not a secret. They're aware of it. Everybody should be aware of it.
Okay. Next meeting, I kind of been busy this meeting, as you guys can see. Next meeting, I'm going to get a hold of the technical people here. I've taken a lot of pictures. Brad has taken a lot of pictures. And the police department used their drone and used it to practice with their officers how to use it. I heard that they took some pretty cool pictures of the construction going on, and if we can get that all incorporated, the 5th of next month, we're going to have hopefully a little video in here, okay? And then the last thing was, I know this is not my department, and with all the complaints about the garbage pickup week and stuff like that, listen, our contract is running out with the landfill, and I think there's, if I'm not mistaken, Commissioner Decker, there's possible changes coming. I mean, with our cost, how we do things, if we're even going to have a pickup anymore. I'm not saying there's not. What I'm saying that we won't have the same deal next contract as we got this contract. So there will be some changes. So be prepared. That's it.
One quick item. On Sunday, the fire department had their, I believe it was the 33rd annual firefighter memorial service. And every year they honor, I think this might be the first year that they've honored 2 people, but they honored 2 firefighters and just want to give them some recognition. Lieutenant Andy Ogburn was the firefighter of the year, and firefighter Ross Aarons earned the Service Above Self Award. So just wanted to send a shout out to those guys for being recognized by their command staff for their achievements. That's it.
Very good. Well, at the end of the day, it was an interesting meeting, and it sounds like we have another interesting one coming up next month. I just like to remind the council, listen, we all got elected to serve the good people of East Peoria and work on the larger good on their behalf. And no matter how divisive specific resolutions, agreements, or whatever we have in front of us become, just keep in mind, for the next 4 years, we have a lot of work. And I think, everybody's serving up here for the right reasons. I'd never discount the meaning behind some of their decisions, their personal decisions at the end of the day. But I hope we rise above it. No matter what the outcome's going to be next month, I hope we can rise above it, look out for the better good of East Peoria as a whole. And with that, I will conclude my comments. I would seek a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn until Tuesday evening, November 5th, 2019 at 6 p.m.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Mingus. Roll call?
Commissioner Decker?
Aye.
Hill?
Aye.
Mingus?
Aye.
Sutherland?
Aye.
Mayor Call?
Aye.
All present voting aye, Your Honor.
Thank you. We are adjourned until we meet again.